Salut, je m'appelle Dominique et je suis étudiant au doctorat en kinésiologie à l'Université Laval. Ce mois-ci, à Santé sans détour, on parle de recherche en nutrition et comment celle-ci peut être utilisée pour prévenir le développement du diabète de type 2. Dans cet épisode où la discussion a été réalisée en anglais, Charles rencontre la docteure May Faraj. La discussion a été animée par deux étudiantes au doctorat, Manal et Maria.
Hi, my name is Maria. I am a PhD student in molecular biology at the Montreal Clinical Research Institute in the laboratory of Dr. Jennifer Estall. And I am passionate about diabetes research since I have type 1 diabetes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Manal. I'm a PhD student in the program of molecular medicine at Laval University and in the lab of Dr. Mathieu Laplante.
My name is Charles. I'm a student. I work at a gas station. I also study entrepreneurship at UQAM, at the University du Québec à Montréal.
Thank you, Manal. So I'm a professor of nutrition at the University of Montreal, and I'm an adjunct professor at the McGill University in experimental medicine. And here at the IRCM, Clinical Research Institute of Montreal, I direct a research unit for clinical research on the prevention for type 2 diabetes. So it's looking at mechanisms for why people get diabetes and how we can treat that using nutrients.
Est-ce que les oméga-3 peuvent aider à prévenir le développement du diabète de type 2 et même à améliorer sa gestion? Comment ça se passe la recherche en nutrition? Ou même, qu'est-ce qu'on sait de l'efficacité des diètes dans la prise en charge du diabète? On va répondre à ces questions-là et à beaucoup d'autres tout en découvrant ensemble le monde de la recherche en nutrition. C'est parti!
To start, Dr. Faraj, could you please tell us about the current research projects in your lab and what led you to initiate these projects? Like, what is your motivation to work on this?
Well, let's start by, I think the motivation for many researchers are innovation, coming up with new things that people have not maybe thought about. But because of our training, each one in their own field, we can connect knowledge, certain information, and we come up with new hypothesis or theory or whatever to study. So the hypothesis or the field of research that I've started about 15 years ago is that you usually go to your doctor, you measure cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, and they tell you whether that gives you a high or low risk for cardiovascular disease. Cholesterol, this bad cholesterol, is on particles in the blood, like balls that carry the cholesterol. And I'm using this to say, if you have high particles, high LDL, you don't only have cardiovascular disease risk, but you have risk for type 2 diabetes. So the whole project in the lab since the past 15 years is to establish the high number of LDL, this bad cholesterol in the blood, as a risk factor for type 2 diabetes and not only cardiovascular disease. Okay, so this has been done through several studies. Right now, I'm on my third study. And this current study is looking at how it's not only the number of these particles, but if you have more receptors on the surface of the tissue, then there will be more uptake of those particles in your tissue. Then this creates a dysfunction in your tissue, like muscle, like fat tissue, like pancreas. All this dysfunction is why we think it can lead to type 2 diabetes. And to treat that, we look at the effect of omega-3, which is the type of fat found mostly in fish oil. So this entry of LDL into the tissue causes certain dysfunction. We talk about inflammation. If you cut your hand, you get inflamed. Well, you can have a regular inflammation that is happening over a long time in your body, and this is what increases the risk for type 2 diabetes. So we think that if LDL goes into fat tissue, for example, we show that it increases inflammation, and we also show that if you add omega-3, you shut it down. You completely eliminate the inflammation. So it's more like looking at the mechanism of a disease and the treatment using nutritional interventions.
throughout your clinical trials, like you meet many diabetic patients, I guess. And how do you think research is contributing to the education and empowerment of individuals with diabetes?
This is a great question, Manal, but because we're doing research to prevent the disease, all our subjects do not have diabetes.
Yeah.
So we take people at various risk factors for them. Usually, we take them with an age range like 45 to 74, which is the age that will have to start increasing the risk. We may take them, not we may, it is happening. We take them with sedentary lifestyle, so there is no exercise. That's another risk factors. We take them with an increased body mass, body fat, and that's another risk factors. But apart from this, they're non-smokers, no disease, no medication, nothing that would really increase the risk aside from these factors. So we meet a lot of people who do not have diabetes, but we meet them multiple times depending on the trial. We can meet them up to 8 times during their intervention. Every time we're educating, we're talking, and we have subjects that have been coming back for every single study that we do because they are getting so much education, so much attention, so much knowledge about their health, and so many studies like testing that they will not, these types of testing that we run in research cannot be run in the clinic because they require very high amount of expertise, many hands, and require funding. And of course, the funding is the public money, like Dominique said. We are funded by Canadian Institute for Health Research. So it's amazing that the money that we all contribute, tax money, is coming back to feed and to help those subjects that we see on a daily because they've interacted with us in the study, so they really know their health and all, but just to generate the knowledge that can help someone else, can help me maybe 20 years from now when I become, at an age that is even higher and higher, like for the risk for diabetes.
And how can someone get involved? Say, I would like to help advance the field of diabetes prevention. What can I do as an individual? How can I get involved in this?
We advertise a lot online. So on the side of Canadian Institute, on the side of IRCM, Clinical Research Institute of Clinical Research in Montreal, we have our study advertised there. We have our study advertised on Facebook. It's always there on Facebook, but it will only target the group we're looking for. So the group we're looking for is age range 45 to 74. Theoretically, everyone in Montreal who is on Facebook in this age range will be sent the advertisement. They will see that in their feed. And this is how we get a lot of our subjects recruited. Another way is IRCM sending newsletters. At the end of the newsletter, you would see an advertising. Another way is, for example, the team, me and my team on Facebook, LinkedIn, and all. We also have a web page for the lab, the tissue lab protein metabolic disease. All these are online advertising. Before we used to do in Metro and 24 Heures and all this because it's free for the public in the metros. After COVID, of course, we had to adjust just because of the hygiene issue. Another thing we did is, of course, the Expo Santé, which also brought us a lot because we talk and people see who are those people behind this advertisement. It's not just abstract, you see us, you talk to us. If you trust us, then you will come. But of course, you have to fit an inclusion criteria. So it's always depend on whether you fit or not fit to be involved in this.
And you have mentioned the interest in patients in getting education from participating in research projects, but do you include patient partners to help you design research projects or improve them, modify them according to their needs?
No, because we talk a lot with the subjects. And what we're looking for right now is mechanisms on a cellular level. So it's very, very important. What we take into account is, are they able to follow the intervention, which is only omega-3, a pill? Sometimes they tell us it's too big. Only one subject had had to stop the intervention because it's too big for her. Unfortunately, we tried to research for a smaller form or a liquid form or something that will help her take the omega-3 without having to pass. We couldn't. There was no replacement of the dose. So this is how they will modify. But remember, it's not an abstract. It's not a cell. It's not a mice studies. It's interacting with people over the 15 years. So there's no way that what we talk is not affecting us on how we conduct the research. They tell us, for example, that coming 4 times for weighing during the period of weight stabilization is too much. So we said, okay, we're going to transfer that. At least give us on the phone. We'll call you on the phone and you give us the weight. And this will reduce their need to transfer and come to the IRCM to take a weight, for example. The pills we used to give them every month. Now we give them every 2 months, again, to reduce the amount of time that they come to IRC. But all this has to be in a research protocol in the consent form. So it can be modified in a way that will best suit the subject. But then the real mechanisms on a cell and tissue level, it's really the lab issue. So our interaction is mostly on how we implement the trial rather than on the mechanisms of the disease.
And talking about implementing research, how do you think are the main challenges in implementing research findings into real-world diabetes care settings?
One, we have to do many studies to prove something, and many studies needs much more money. So always, like you probably heard in research, we do need higher funding. So that because if I have higher funding, then I may be running 2 studies at the same time rather than 1 study at a time. So it all depends. To change clinical practice, it's not 1 study. Okay, it's multiple studies that will prove eventually a point that you say, okay, it's worth now changing clinical practice. Is it done in people that they screen for the number of LDL to say you are at high or low risk? Not yet. But this evidence has been accumulating over the past 15 years, and it takes probably a closer, we publish, we present, we talk about it, but it probably takes more at the government level that they come and they sit and they hear more evidence, from the researchers themselves, more interaction rather than, it's like just us publishing, and eventually there has to be more committees to review the literature so that we decide, okay, is it going forward or not? So, but again, it takes time because human research is quite, I would say, special to run. It requires a lot of expertise, a lot of infrastructure, machinery, people, and multiple studies to change one concept. So time is also a very important factor.
And do you connect with pharmaceutical industries, let's say, to promote or to make it more faster, maybe the clinical trials, because they have more money, of course, and
But you know what? The type of research will not be very interesting for pharma companies because we're trying to prevent the disease using nutrients. I don't need the subjects to buy an medication for them to prevent the disease. If I were be doing an intervention with a drug target that will help, maybe I would connect with those companies because it's to the best of their advantage that I run the research, because then the pill will be bought. But I'm not working on a treatment with a target. I'm working on how to use the nutrients themselves. If I can use the amount of omega-3 coming from the fish, I would tell people, keeping. But if I were to be giving the same amount, I give a pill. I'm not going to show the brand because I'm not promoting anything here, but I give a pill that is a concentrated form of omega-3, which is the fat coming from the fish, EPA and DHA. It's 3.6 grams per day. If I were to give the same amount coming from fish, people will have to eat about 3 servings a day. Who's going to eat 3 servings? Okay, it's not possible. So for me to increase the amount of omega-3, I have to refer to this form of pill, like Shelu, for me to be using to increase the concentration. Else, I would be happily, and this is what we always say, eat the fish, because there's so many things and real nutrients that we don't know. Okay, there's so much benefit from the fish that we also don't know. So this is why, like, it's two-way factor, but again, it's to prevent rather than to treat.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think your research is really interesting, and I think a lot of people can benefit from that as well.
Thank you.
And May, if I can ask a question, just thinking,
course.
because in research, we often use high doses of different nutrients, different products to prove a point, to test our hypothesis. But how does it apply to someone that wants to actually, say, increase their omega-3 dosage to prevent diabetes, for example? How would you explain it to them? Is it necessary to get such a high dose, or what's going on there?
Very good question, Dominique. I say high dose just because it's high if you want to eat it on a fish consumption. But the dose that I give is less than what even Santé Canada recommends. On Santé Canada website, they say 1 to 5 grams per day. And it depends on what are you trying to target. There are certain, doses for certain outcomes, let's say. So some outcomes may be harder to find, but what we are testing right now has never been tested. So I can't tell you, can you go lower or can you go higher? I can tell you that the previous trial that we just completed, which was about the high or low level of LDL and how much it does damage in terms of the function of insulin, the secretion, and is omega-3 helping? We gave 2.7 for 3 months, and we saw an amazing outcome in terms of certain parameters we were looking at, including the inflammation that I'm telling you about in the fat tissue, which usually is one of the major causes to get type 2 diabetes. But now with the current trial that we're running, which is about not the high and low LDL in the blood, but high and low receptors. Because eventually, if you also have high receptors, you're also taking up more LDL, even if your LDL is normal. We actually choose people to be normal LDL, but we separate them based on the receptors. And now we're giving 6 months, 3.6. So we've increased 1 extra pill and we've added another 3 months. This is giving, to date, so far what we've seen, benefit on a certain function of insulin and sugar interaction that we do not see in a 3 pill. We're giving now 4, it's better than the 2. So obviously there is an added benefit, but again, it's within the recommendation of Santé Canada. Else, I will have to go and ask them for a permission to increase the dose of omega-3. And why would I do that? Because I don't know if right now what they recommend is doing a benefit or not, but apparently it does on these new outcomes that no one had ever tested. So it's a great thing because it goes along with what they recommend on their website. And in fact, in our consent form, we always put the link for Santé Canada for people to go and read on the omega-3 to see what is the recommendation that's out there.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. Do you believe that even after there is a chance that, I don't know, because I still have that, I have diabetes type 2, and I always, since my diagnosis, I had a high percentage of cholesterol firstly, and then I had diabetes after. So I think might be like a correlation of something.
I think you're asking me if the omega-3 may help now your case that you already have diabetes. I can't answer this because I have not done this specifically for what you just said. Because you said I had higher cholesterol. it's not about the cholesterol itself as much as the number of the particles that carry this
Okay.
cholesterol. We call them LDL.
Yeah.
So if I were, and people have tried to do that, they tried to just measure cholesterol in relation to the risk for type 2 diabetes,
Okay.
and they find no relationship. So
Okay.
people gave up, but it's not about the amount of cholesterol. It's about how many particles are there.
Particles. Yeah.
Think of them as spaceships, okay? You can have one large spaceship that is carrying 100 people, and this 100 people is not as bad in one ship versus if you have 100 ships and each ship is
Yes.
carrying one person. Eventually, you have the same number of people, hundreds.
Yeah.
But instead of having one big ship, which is not too dangerous, you're having hundreds of them that
Yeah.
are much smaller because they're only one person.
Yeah.
And so they can infiltrate your tissue much easier and cause damage much easier.
Okay.
So if I were to look like people were looking only at the number of people or the amount of cholesterol, I will not be doing research right now.
Yeah. Okay.
You
So
got
it's really
what I
about
mean?
yeah, it's really about the number of particles in
Exactly.
okay, perfect.
Exactly. The number of your particles that carry this cholesterol that you're telling me about.
Mhm.
So I have not done, nor other people have done, a
Okay.
study to say if I give now someone who has diabetes and have high number of these particles, this LDL,
Okay.
would I be able to help them or not? I don't know.
Okay.
So this is actually a wonderful question
Yeah.
because this can easily be now what you just absolutely said. It can easily be a research question to now target people who have diabetes, type 2 diabetes, separate them with high and low ApoB, and see if omega-3 is, ApoB, I mean the number of the particles that are carrying the cholesterol. And then see if the omega-3 is helping. The main issue, though, when we have someone who already has a diabetes or any disease, is the drugs that they take.
Yeah.
So the different people may be on different drugs. And how is this omega-3 interaction with the number of the particle? Is the drug affecting this interaction?
Yeah.
Is there
There's
be a
gonna be a
difference in
lot
the
of
people?
there's gonna be a lot of interactions in between drugs, I believe.
Exactly. So for that alone, you will require a much larger sample size, we call
Yeah.
them. So instead of me looking now at 48 subjects for the study that I'm doing for prevention, maybe I will have to be looking at 200 subjects so that I can account for the different types of drugs that are taken, and I can adjust for them at the end of the study. Is the drug affecting my outcomes or not? But you know what,
Okay.
Charles? I think it's doable. And I think that's a very good question. And I think it may be a new research topic I will tell you about. If we carry it through, maybe you will be
Yeah.
contacted personally to tell us, please, Charles,
Yeah,
come
of
and join
course.
us.
Of course,
Yeah.
I'm always free.
Yeah. That's a very good point. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you, Charles.
So apparently a new research project is cooking now. Yeah.
Exactly. And I will know my colleague, the chronologist that I work with a lot, Remy Rabat-Soloré, will probably be very happy because he has a large population type 2 diabetes. So it may be doable, and I don't see why not.
That's cool. Yeah, this is why research is nice. It's about like trying, innovating, and trying to find
Yes.
something new. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the suggestion, Charles.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Faraj, you're a nutritionist and a researcher at the same time. So we know for diabetic patients, like there are some diets that are existing, like that might revert diabetes, like ketogenic diets maybe. But I don't know how exactly it's true or not for that. For some cases, it is helping. For others, maybe not. But what about prevention? Do you think there is a specific diet that could prevent occurrence of type 2 diabetes?
Nor the obesity network, nor the recommendation of the Diabetic Association will absolutely recommend one certain, we call them, dietary models. Okay. The dietary model that is best for any person is a model that is according to you. It's personalized. You can stick on it for the longest time that you want. It's healthy. It's not inducing any deficiency. It's something that opens up food rather than restrict you on a certain types of food. And you absolutely have, there is no absolutely no and absolutely yes. There is none. In both communities, whether for the obesity network or for diabetic network, or even cardiovascular disease, they recommend that the best diet, again, is the diet that fits you. It can be vegetarian, can be Mediterranean, it can be high carb, it can be high fat. But we know that certain diets are associated with certain deficiencies. We know that a high fat diet that you're talking about, Atkins, will be associated with certain deficiencies. You're missing on a lot of vegetables and fruits and carbohydrates and the bread. There's so many things that you're missing on when you're going on a very strict Atkins diet. If you're really, really on a strict Atkins diet. Plus, because of the amount of the proteins and the fats that it has, this by itself has other problems. It's not only about losing weight. It's never only about losing weight. It's about losing weight while staying healthy. I don't want to lose my fat. I would love to lose weight. Why not? It's like it's fine. I think we all can benefit, but I don't want to lose it while hurting my body, myself, with lack of nutrients, with insufficiencies, and losing my muscle. A major thing when you go on Atkins diet is that you lose your muscle because you're not having the insulin input all the time. If you're really, really, really on Atkins, very low sugar. So I would say probably the diet that is the most recommended is the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet has a lot of vegetables and fruits, have a lot of omega-3s already coming from the fish, not supplements necessarily, is very free in terms of input of what you eat or what you don't eat. There's a lot of varieties, and it is associated with the most complete factors. We always recommend high vegetables and fruits and seeds and beans and, all these types of recommend. It's always there, and it's now, more concentrated in the Mediterranean diet because of multiple issues. There is the olive oil, so you have monounsaturated fat. If you're familiar with the type of fat, you have the fish, so it's the omega-3 type of fat, and it's lower on the saturated fat. Even saturated fat itself can be good or bad. There are different types of saturated fat. So to pool them all and they say, it's all bad, again, it's not a good thing. So this is why I'm saying you go on extremes, you say very high fat or very high carbs. It's not an ideal situation for me or the obesity network or the diabetes network, because you will go into deficiency. Especially for the high fat that you said, or high protein, it adds a load on your kidneys to get rid of the amino acids that are in the protein. So imagine someone with diabetes who already have issues with their kidney function, and you tell them add the more protein on them and induce the stress even more on your kidneys. Not very ideal.
So it's all about balance.
It's all about balance and having the right nutrients. Okay, nobody's gonna be following on you every half a year to be checking in your blood if you have all the micronutrients, all the macronutrients, all the type of fats, is you have good muscle function, heart function, head function. If you have hypertension, nobody's going to be doing all these. The best thing is to make sure that you empower your body with the best nutrients possible so that you have a balance between the good and the bad. We would all love to go and have a piece of cake. Why not? But if somebody, let's say, with type 2 diabetes wants to have a piece of cake, they're likely to incorporate it in other foods that will have proteins and that will have, plus the addition of the fiber and the nutrients that will all, at the end of the day, interact to counterbalance an effect of maybe one meal that you have high sugar. Okay, so the more the body is already prepared, the defense mechanisms are there, the more it's able to handle a stress of something, that may be adding to the stress of the body. But to have the stress like a high carb or high protein or high fat all the time, not an ideal situation.
Yeah. Can you tell us, like simplify what is your typical day as a researcher?
Oh my God, it's never a typical day. There's always so many. If we have a subject, that everything is about the subject. So, my team will receive the subject downstairs. It depends on the type of test that we run. When we run tests that we give a high fat meal, a challenge for the body, and then we do a biopsy of the fat tissue before the fat meal and 4 hours after the fat meal, we call it a factory day. Because we take the fat tissue, we take immune cells from the blood, we have multiple studies and experiments that we have to run. So it can be a typical 12-hour day where we're from 7 to 7 running experiments. The subject is not with us, of course, 12 hours. They are with us about 6 hours, 7 hours, and then they leave. But we stay running experiments. And I say we because I'm also included. I still do things over the bench. If it's a day where we have no subjects, well, many times I'm behind my computer answering emails or responding to courses. I teach a lot. So this is another part that is entered into my day because, of course, when I have a teach, then I go to the University of Montreal to teach. So it's really never typical, but it's nevertheless enjoyable, very enjoyable.
Yeah, this is what's important, enjoying what you do. So
enjoying the freedom of thoughts, that you develop your own ideas and then we say test them, but it's really trying to prove or not prove in the subject. And is it true or not? And when we run a study, the last study that we just completed, it started in 2013, it ended up in 2020. So this is 7-8 years of recruiting and testing and doing until now we're starting to publish it. So you can imagine how long it takes if a study is not, especially for the human subject, if the study is not well designed, I can run all these years and after 8-9 years discover, oh no, I didn't state from the beginning. It's too late.
Yeah.
It's too late. All the testing, all the money, all the time that the subject are spending with us, and of course our time. So this is why it's extremely important to build human study on a very, very strong background, and we call them preliminary data because we've tested things on perhaps previous. I take samples from previous study, I test them, I build them, and I conduct them. So it's very important to build on a very strong trial from the beginning for everyone's sake and for our money that we put in taxes too.
So you rely on preliminary data from humans, right? But do you
Always.
rely on fundamental science, research?
Yeah, because all our studies are always about clinical research. So we want to prove the mechanism and the treatment in humans. So this is when we get the human. But from our subjects, we take tissue samples, which is the fat tissue, and we take cell samples. And the cells can be adipocytes and can be immune cells. And those immune cells can be immune cells in the blood and can be immune cells in the fat tissue itself. So we test the things on multiple levels because if you want to look at mechanisms and what's being activated inside the cells, I can't only depend on the human. I give an omega-3 and there's an outcome. But who says that this outcome is because of adipose tissue? So you take a sample of adipose tissue and you add omega-3. You add LDL that I'm talking about, and you add omega-3 and you see it's done. And you have LDL an effect, I add omega-3 and there's no more effect. So this is where you directly see the effect of LDL and omega-3.
Yeah.
And then I take their immune cells and I do experiments and I add LDL and I add omega-3 and I see what is inside the cells that are being up or down regulated or increased or decreased in a simpler way in terms of pathways that are fueling, this mechanism that I'm looking at. So of course I have to go up in. So it's like outside, inside, and then inside and outside. This is why the type of research we run is called like a bedside to bench,
Yeah.
because we study in human and we transfer everything on the bench to do experiments in adipose tissue and fat tissue and in cell.
Interesting.
But
Really
this is what makes it fun.
Yeah,
So it
exactly.
makes it so much fun because I'm very sure of what we have.
And it
Yeah.
implies many skills and many responsibilities as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. It implies a lot amount of skills that are, that's why I'm saying it takes a lot to build finally to get the results, to train the people. And it's many of us doing the research. Never, yes, it's my idea, but I'm not the hands. At the end of the day, it's my team. I'm very proud of I train and, so that they run the thing on a daily basis while I go teach, while I'm answering emails, but on the day of the study, when we have the patient, it's all of us getting involved. So this is how I meet the subjects. I love it.
That's nice.
And do you have many patients at the same time, or it's one person, you collect blood?
No. Yeah, no. It's always one person at a time because there's a lot of tests and experiments being done on the same day. And for the security of the subjects, like I just told you about the study where we give them a high-fat meal and we do biopsies before and after. There's another test where we measure how their body responds to glucose and how they secrete insulin. And this is quite an invasive test because the subject is sitting with infusion of glucose and infusion of insulin. And so we see when we give them glucose, how much their blood will secrete insulin. We collect blood every 10 minutes. So it's very focused on the subject. And then we raise the insulin very high so that we counterbalance with glucose. So all these types of tests, it's not something to take lightly at all. We're
Mhm.
like completely focused on the health because it can be risky if it's not well run. So if it's not, so every focus is on the subjects. We have to be extremely, and we can't afford any mistake. So it's only one person that can be studied at a time.
And what would be your general advice for people who want to pursue their career in research?
If the research and to be involved in research is extremely challenging. And you may get a very higher salary if you move elsewhere in pharma company or other position or whatever, but it has to be who you are. Like you have to genuinely like to invent, genuinely like to know how things work. Okay. It's always been me. This is what I do. Since I was a child, I would open things to see how they work, just because I want to know. I want to know the how and why and where. And I want to know, if you have this type of, it's like you want to know how life function or how work, then it's a good place for you. And patience. You gotta be patient because, like I said, it takes 8-9 years maybe for something you've been working on back then to be published. So meanwhile, you can't give up. You have to carry it through for you at the end of the day. So if I give up because my paper got refused or my grant got refused or a student is not doing well or even for a student themselves, if they do an experiment and they find it's not working, you can't give up and you can't be depressed and you can take 2 days to just feel down, but then you have to bounce again. So it's really a lot to do with the personalities. And I always tell my team, choose a job that fits your skin. You really cannot change your skin to fit a job. Okay. I can't function when someone is telling me do this. I can't. So this is why this position for me is extremely rewarding because I have the freedom of mind. So I can invent what I want and I can apply what I want. So
Yeah. This also shows the importance of personalized medicine. Like, it's the case of Charles, and like for everyone else, like it's really important to focus on that now.
Manal, we've always given different types of pills for the same disease.
Yeah.
Why would we ever think that there's one diet fits all? It does not exist.
True.
Okay.
No.
So you see all these fads on the internet. Oh, go high carb. Oh, go high fat. Go high protein. Do this, do that. There is no diet that fits. There is not one diet fits all. It does not work. Why do we personalize for drugs? Is it to benefit all the pharma companies? No. It's because this drug would work on this person and this drug would work on another person.
Yeah.
So how can we possibly assume that something that is so essential for our living, and it's not only about the health, it's the pleasure. Okay. You may love to eat strawberries. I may absolutely hate them. So how can you make me eat strawberries because it's so good for me and it has vitamin C and it has fiber and it has low carbs? You can't. I don't like it. So it's not a pill. It's something that you enjoy per day, and you have to keep on enjoying, and you have to have a variety in a way that also benefits you in health-wise, not destroy your health just because we want to lose weight.
Just to add on the importance of like the amount we are eating and not necessarily just only what we are eating, because I'm doing presently a trial on Ozempic, which is a drug to reduce obesity and mainly for patients with type 2 diabetes, and I have lost 15 pounds in like 8 weeks maybe, but I lost this weight because I was eating less, not because I changed my diet. And this is where I realized that, it's really like reducing what I'm eating, that this is how I'm going to be able to lose weight. It's not really changing what I'm eating because I'm already eating like quite good. And
you can argue the opposite too, Maria. I mean, obviously it's all the quality and the quantity, but
they are both
it's
important.
also you can argue that now again you're taking the target as weight, but there's a lot of people with excess weight who are eating quantity-wise large. So yes, in weight you have a bigger weight, but if you measure their profile in the blood and risk for diabetes, cardiovascular, they're perfectly fine. Metabolically, they're perfectly fine. And these are the people that we see in the lab. We recruit people who have higher weight, more than the BMI of 25, the famous BMI of 25. Not that it's necessarily a very good reflection, but we say they have excess weight in terms of the amount of fat that they have. But then you see that for the same level of fat, some are extremely healthy metabolically. Okay? I'm not talking about the weight on the knees, the weight on the joints and all this. Maybe that is stressing them. I'm not talking whether they have depression issues. Like, I'm not talking about other things than metabolic. Metabolically, you can have the same weight and one person can be perfectly fine, better than me and you and everyone, and one person can have metabolic abnormalities. So here we're talking about the amount that is higher in terms of calories, but quality-wise, those calories may be coming from high vegetables and fruits and high omega-3, high monounsaturated, like seeds and nuts and all this. So it's giving this protection that I'm telling you about, this defense mechanism against the metabolic risk. And it's not related to the weight. So obesity is one of the risk factors, okay? But there's multiple other risk factors. There is aging, there's genetics, there's microbiota, there's the environment, there's keeping, there's smoking, there's alcohol, there's multiple issues. We have to find a way in our head to keep on separating just the fat mass from the disease, because it's not necessarily 100% equal. It's not. We know statistically it's not. But what you're saying, Maria, is absolutely right. Yes, it's about the amount, but the opposite can also be argued. So eventually, at the end of the day, it's the amount and the thought. This is really where you want to put the stress on. And with the Ozempic, it helps you a lot because it works on your central nervous system to tell you, I'm not hungry, I'm not hungry,
Yeah.
I'm not hungry. Okay, so this signal that tells you I'm not hungry is one of the issues in some people with obesity because the signal does not work. The signal is abnormal and it tells them all the time, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. So that's why the drug works so well because it can take people who have a dysregulated hormonal regulation of their energy, how much they eat and how much they spend energy, and fix it in a way that, yes, eventually they're not hungry, they're not going to eat. They reduce the amount, like you said. Plus, of course, other function on the gastric emptying, you feel
Yeah.
full for a longer time. And there's multiple ways, but all this plays together to make you eat less quantities. You eat healthy, which is wonderful, but now you add now the quantities, and of course you're going to lose. But take out the medication if you have not trained yourself, and your weight is going to come back again.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a question about comorbidities. Do you believe that people with des problèmes cardio-congénitaux ou des problèmes, je dirais des problèmes au niveau du cholestérol, ou même à partir des gènes familiaux, peu importe, est-ce que la descendance de certaines personnes, admettons, ma mère, elle a eu une mère, ma grand-mère était diabétique, j'ai une tante qui avait beaucoup de problèmes cardiopathiques aussi, tu sais, elle avait beaucoup de problèmes au niveau du cœur. Donc, est-ce que ça joue en tant que tel sur le diabète?
We already know people with diabetes have a higher risk for, let's say, cardiovascular disease and stroke. We know statistically that if you have diabetes, you increase the chance of getting this disease by 2 to 4 times. But because both diseases have the same mechanisms, it's not only the diabetic that is associated with the disease, it's all the abnormalities that led to diabetes that is also leading to cardiovascular disease. Of course, now that once you develop diabetes, then there's a higher level of abnormalities on how much your body is using sugar, how can it benefit from the fat, how can it store fat, and all this. All these abnormalities may become worse when you become diabetic. And that's why diabetes increases the risk for this disease. But not necessarily the diabetes itself. It's all these things that happened before that increases for both diabetes and cardiovascular disease. We know that weight loss, 5 to 10%, improves much of these risk factors. This is now the point that we're trying to establish. How can you help people with nutrient or nutritional intervention, perhaps not only about the diet, but it's also about the exercise, that they will consume a diet that they are happy with, they can use for a long, many years, and yet achieve some kind of weight loss if they can, because the 5 to 10%, measurement-wise, it does improve metabolism.
Okay.
So this is why, but this is not improving only diabetes, it's also improving cardiovascular disease and hypertension, and perhaps other issues that are related to the disease itself. So it really becomes a balance. But again, it's a very long, like the disease developed over many years, your treatment will take many years to have an effect.
Yeah.
So this is why a diet has to be something that you can take for a lifetime, not something that you go on for a month and say, okay, I've lost weight, 10 kilos, wonderful. And then I go back where I was. It's a change of behavior that you will adjust over a long term that eventually to you will give you the benefits.
Well, thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Faraj. It was a very nice discussion.
Thank you, Manal.
Maria, if you want to end up the discussion, if you want to comment before anything, or it was very interesting. We learned a lot, we enjoyed, and this is what's important. And
Thank you. So I didn't talk too much. Good.
oh, it was really good. Thanks a lot. It was really beneficial for all of us.
Thank you.
And we now have the proof that engagement between patients and researchers can lead to new research projects. And
Yes, yes. If we have the research project, I will tell you to contact Charles, and Charles will be invited to be part of the study. So
Why not?
why not?
That's
Thank
good.
you so much.
Thank
by
you
the way,
all.
it was really important for me as well.
Thank you,
And
Charles.
That's great. Thanks again all for your time. It was amazing. And
Yeah.
I guess people will enjoy listening to this. So
Thank you, Manal. Thank you, guys. I think you're doing a great thing. Well done.
thank you.
Thank you.
Comment avez-vous trouvé cette discussion-là? Personnellement, elle m'a appris que la qualité de ce qu'on mange est peut-être même plus important que la quantité pour prévenir le développement du diabète de type 2. J'ai aussi appris à quel point ça prend du temps et de l'énergie pour faire de la recherche en nutrition et encore plus pour que ça se traduise dans des changements concrets dans la pratique clinique. Finalement, je trouve que cet épisode-là démontre bien l'importance d'ouvrir un dialogue entre les personnes citoyennes et scientifiques. La question qui a été posée par Charles, qui pourrait éventuellement mener au développement même d'un projet de recherche en soi, le démontre bien. Sur ce, on espère que vous avez apprécié, puis on se retrouve le mois prochain pour un autre épisode de Santé sans détour. Donc, c'est ce qui m'a fait à notre épisode du mois. On espère que cette discussion-là a permis de répondre à certaines de vos questions. N'hésitez pas à nous écrire en commentaire et par courriel pour nous faire part de ce qui vous a le plus marqué, pour nous donner votre avis sur le balado ou, si ça vous intéresse, de participer à une discussion. On vous invite aussi à nous envoyer vos questions qui touchent à la recherche sur la santé du cœur, le métabolisme, le diabète ou l'obésité. On va trouver l'expert ou l'experte qui va être en mesure de mieux vous répondre. On se voit le mois prochain pour le prochain épisode de Santé sans détour.